Dude, that's terrible. Wow.
I forgot the Shamrock Shakers back in Subway.
Oh, that reminds me of the time I made a video about Israel. Welcome back to my Idiot Explained videos, where we are leaving Florida and we are now heading to the Middle East in the middle of a war. And you might be asking, what country are we covering if it's in the middle of war? And I'll tell you, Israel. And we're going to have up to 11 parts in this video. So let's get into it without any time to waste. Basic facts in geography, historical background, government and political structure. I grabbed two. Economy and resources, culture and society, education and health, notable landmark in geography, modern life and technology, key issues and challenges, recent development, and interesting facts. Basic facts in geography. Israel is named Israel, obviously, and the capital is Jerusalem. It is located in the Middle East and is bordered to the north by Lebanon, to the northeast by Syria, to the southwest of Egypt, and then to the west of the Mediterranean Sea. Here's a map of Israel with basically everything you need to know to truly travel it. And the size of Israel is 290 miles north to south and 85 miles east to west. 8,522 square miles is the total area, and 9,141,000 people live in Israel. That is 1,072.6 person per square mile in Israel. And 3/4 of the population is Jewish, and 1/4 of the population are Arabs. The urban population of Israel is around 92.9%, and the rural population is 70.1%. Historical background. Some brief history on Israel is we start in the beginning with the colonial history, where the Zionist movement had the Jewish people establish home in the land that is now Israel. In World War II, in 1938, the British supported the Jews who were in Palestine, but tensions were rising due to the immigrants of the Jewish population and the Arab population not getting along. Fast forward a bit, in 1947, the UN made it so that split the land, so 55% of it went to the Jewish and 45% went to the Arabs. Israel would then be established on May 14th, 1948, after war between the Arabs, and right after establishment, there was another war between the Arabs because Arabs just hate Israel a lot. And this is a very common theme that's still prevalent in today. Government and political structure. Israel has a parliamentary democracy. Their prime minister is Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the head of the government, and they have a president, Isaac Herzog, who is head of the state. Israel has two main political parties, like Likud and Labour, but they also have some smaller parties, such as Kinua, Yesh, Atid, Hatnun, and Koino. Religion plays a big part in the government, as it's how Israel kind of identifies itself as the Jewish country. And the government has the status quo to keep the state with the Jewish character. And they still have stuff like where marriages and divorces are controlled by Orthodox rabbinate, and the government heavily funds these Jewish religion. Economy and resources. Major Israel industries are high technology, defense, aerospace, diamond industry, chemical, agrotech, energy, natural resources, and manufacturing. Key exports are technology, diamonds, chemicals, and petroleum gas. There's kind of a similarity between those two. But some key imports, however, are mineral fuels, raw materials, machinery, technology, and transport equipment. Here's a GDP chart for Israel. As you can see, it's pretty steady, and the employment rate for Israel actually is 61.8%.
That's pretty good.
Some natural resources Israel has is natural gases, which are their primary resources, if you can't tell from their exports. But they also have minerals, which also helps with exports. Culture and society. Israel's main language is Hebrew and Arab. And most people in Israel, obviously, like I've said, are Jewish. So once again, this influences a lot about Israel. And they basically run off of Judaism, and it basically intensifies, especially with the fact that their capital is Jerusalem. Traditions Israel has is first Shabbat, which is from Friday sundown to Saturday night every single week, where it's basically a period of time where they do nothing. They don't go to work, they don't do anything, and they just kind of lays around like fat chuds. Next up is Hanukkah, which is the Jews' version of Christmas, and it actually takes place over an 8-day period from December 4th to December 12th. It also has a South Park episode too, because, Kyle. Mimoa, which is a holiday and tradition of what Jewish people do after another holiday ends, is right after they celebrate that holiday by eating a ton and by having parties. And in my opinion, I think it's just an excuse to party more. Yom HaShoron is Israel's Memorial Day to commemorate the Jews who died in World War II. And during this day, a siren is sounded for around 2 minutes in the day, which then all Jewish people in Israel are expected to stop whatever they're doing and stand for a moment of silence. Some important culture norms that Israel has is, first, everyone in Israel apparently is just very blunt, straightforward. They will just go tell you straight for the answer. They won't beat around the bush. But yet, despite being so blunt, apparently they're very nice to strangers. They don't want to be mean. And they're also very heavily on believing in being close with family. And also wearing modest clothing. So, don't get dress coded. Education and health. In Israel, it is mandatory to go to school, and you must have an education. And Israel's education system is a lot like ours, where they go from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. Israel studies stuff all the way from science, math, humanity, and into Jewish culture. And mind you, this can vary depending on school to school. Some schools won't go on as heavy on Jewish cultures, others will. Israel's literacy rate is around 33%, where the OECD's average is around 33.9%. So Israel is just a bit under the average for literacy rate. Other universities in Israel is Weizmann Institution of Science, Tel Aviv University, and Hebrew University for Jerusalem. The life expectancy of birth for people in Israel, males is 80 years old, and for females it is 84.9 years old. Israel also does have universal health care, but Israel lacks in numbers of hospital equipment, doctors, nurse, and Israel spends 7.6% of its GDP on healthcare, which is below the OECD's average of 9.3%. The Israel people, however, are still pretty healthy, and the most popular health problems and diseases are kind of just common ones, such as heart disease, Alzheimer's, and kidney disease. Notable landmarks in geography. Some popular landmarks in Israel is the Dome of the Rock, Old City of Jerusalem, Masada, and the Dead Sea. Geographic features of Israel are forested highlands and fertile green valleys all the way to mountainous deserts, and then coastal plains that can go all the way up to semi-tropical lands. UNESCO has 9 World Heritage Sites in Israel, which is the most of any country UNESCO is in. And they are in Mazda, the Old City of Ace, White City of Tel Aviv, Biblical Tells, Incense Route, the Baha'i Holy Place in Haifa and Western Galilee, Caves of Marina and Bet Guvrin, and a necropolis of Bet Shiram. Modern life and technology. Some technological advancements in Israel is the PillCam firewall and the USB flash drive. Internet usage is very high also in Israel at a 91%, making it one of the most popular states using internet. Urban life is fast-paced. It can get crowded very fast. They mainly live in apartments, and people usually use transport such as trains. They walk, and they even use e-scooters to travel. Royal life, however, is a lot slower, and it's a lot cheaper. And they mainly focus on agriculture, and they use less technology. They also work together more, and they live mainly in their own private houses, and they transport by their own private cars instead of having to use public transportation. Some popular stuff in Israel is, one, their music, which they have this very unique type of music called the Mizrah, which is a genre only popular in Israel. You can listen to it, but the only people really listening to it are people from Israel. Israel also has a thing called the Jewish Olympics. Well, it's not called that. What they call it is the Maccabean Games, but it's a Jewish Olympics. Anyways, some big innovations Israel has had is the Iron Dome, drip irrigation, and the Trophy APS. Key issues and challenges. A key issue in Israel right now is the war they're kind of in between Lebanon, Palestine, and Iran. They have gotten to the point where they're starting to bomb each other, and right now the conflict, luckily, is mainly sticking between the Middle East, but slowly, every day, it's starting to rope in more and more countries. Right now, America is starting to get involved, and if America is getting involved, who else is getting involved? But that's not the only issue Israel has. Israel also has a problem with pollution, mainly water. They're having these small plastic pieces starting to get into their water, and other waste getting into the water, and they're starting to have water droughts. They're starting to have water shortages. It's not just because of pollution. It's also because of climate change and probably many other tiny little factors that are just accumulating, causing these water shortages. But like I said, pollution is still a big problem, and it's getting to the point where they're starting to dump it onto Palestine. What I mean by this is that Israel starting to take their waste and start dumping it near Palestine's borders and starting to make it their problem. And where they're dumping this, they're starting to dump it near the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which Palestine's obviously very close to. Rightfully so. Palestine's kind of pissed by this. Palestine doesn't like this. And I don't think anybody would if your neighbor started dumping waste onto your land. So I think it's pretty safe to say that neighboring relationships with Israel, they're not good. Basically, no neighboring country really likes Israel. Hell, they don't even really like any of each other. They're all kind of fighting each other. And, with bombs. Big bombs. Not big bombs yet. Yet. Hopefully stays that way. Anyways. But Israel, luckily, does have a big alliance with America, as America is a big donator to Israel with money and military tech. So America is helping them with weapons, money, like I said, and this is kind of what's keeping Israel afloat from this war. So, $8 billion to Israel. Recent developments. An important event in Israel is obviously the war. And like I've said before, the war mainly consists of Israel, Iran, Lebanon, and Palestine. But it's starting not to just consist of those four, as it's starting to reach out day by day. And like I said, right now, America is also starting to get roped into this, as now they're starting to send bombs and starting to kill people in these other countries as well. Which, if America's in it, who else is going to join? When does this thing start getting very bad? What if someone bombed Russia? What if all this stuff can get very bad very fast, and this can have a very bad global effect on Israel and the world itself, as this could break out into a World War III. Plus, not to mention the fact that Israel's people are starting to get very split about these wars. More and more, these people are starting to want the war to end. So, as you get more of these people in your country wanting these wars to end, this can destroy Israel from the inside out. Interesting facts. Some unique facts about Israel is that they have more museums per capita than any other country in the world. Also, they have the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point on Earth at 1,315 feet below sea level. Israel is also the only liberal democracy in the Middle East. And now, let's hear some famous people from Israel. First up is the Big Ben himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's the current prime minister of Israel, and he's starting to get very popular online. For the right reasons? No. Still popular. Judas Pearl is a philosopher, electrician engineer, and a computer scientist. And he is also from Israel, and he is pretty popular. He has done some great stuff. Final person we're going to mention is Ed Barak, who is kind of like an everything man, as he was a former prime minister of Israel, and then he was chief of general staff of Israeli defense, and then the last thing he's done, Israel-wise, is become the minister of defense. Also, he was kind of in the Epstein files, but some distinct life facts from Israel is that they mainly use WhatsApp. Like, I don't know anybody who actually uses WhatsApp, but they do. Companies use it. People use it. Like everyday people. Tons of people use it. It's kind of like the Israel version of Snapchat. Also, almost all of Israel's websites look like they are poorly made and are filled to the brim with advertisements and pop-up ads, which sounds like a nightmare. But something kind of good for working people, maybe not customer-wise, is Israel does not believe the customer is always right. They will believe that the customers are in the wrong sometimes. And apparently, more than most of the time, they think the customer's in the wrong. So basically, their policy is the customer's never in the right.
I made you out of clay. Dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. With dreidel I will play.
What the nut was that?
Wait, somebody let me sell Shamrock Shakes.